Hey everyone, welcome back. The Gaza plane lands at Tambo, and South Africa's twisted anti-Israel narrative takes off. Friday, November 13th, just days before South Africa is going to host some of the G20 leaders at the Leaders Summit. A chartered plane with 150 Palestinians from Gaza lands in Johannesburg. It's then held on the tarmac for 12 hours. Their entry was denied because they had no proof of funds, accommodation, or return ticket. That is just standard operating procedure. Gift of the givers decides to intervene. What happens next exposes two completely opposing realities. An explosion of emotive headlines and clickbait fury. The exact sort of thing I despise. So let's take a look at both sides of the story. And essentially, the one thing that comes out of all of this is that our government was unprepared, which is lost in all of the emotion. Come on, guys, it's ramble time. So one side sees a sinister Israeli plot. The other side sees a legitimate, but perhaps clumsily executed humanitarian corridor that South Africa simply wasn't told about. But let's take a quick look at a Tim Flack article that appeared in Biz News, and it puts just some of the facts on the table, removing all of this unnecessary emotion. And I say unnecessary because politics and business shouldn't include religion or emotion. Business is business. Let's take a look at that article. So this appeared in Biz News on the 14th of November. Tim Flack, how over 100 Gazans quietly flew to South Africa, and how the story was twisted online. Because I'm actually going to pose a couple of interesting questions at the end of this video that really makes you think about, was this actually a play, a distraction, a very well-coordinated event? The instant online narrative, before the verification had even begun, a completely different story erupted online. South African social media commentators loudly declared that these passengers were refugees abandoned by Israel because their passports had not been stamped. See, this is the problem with the uneducated having access to millions and millions of people, millions and millions of other uneducated people who simply like to push the repost button, as if they're getting paid to push the repost button. Activists and NGOs repeated the claim with remarkable confidence. Within hours, a single narrative had settled. Israel has stranded them, and this incident somehow served as fresh proof of ethnic cleansing and genocide. The volume of repetition replaced factual understanding. This is a classic distract, divide, and conquer technique played by politicians and governments worldwide. It says here, the Gazans paid for this process to exercise their own choice, not because of any sudden emergency or abandonment. There was an agreement negotiated earlier this year, forms the foundation of this entire mechanism. It was concluded between the United States, Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey, with over 20 states participating in the broader framework. It established a structured process allowing Gazans to leave voluntarily and safely, with Israel responsible for operational coordination in partnership with these international actors. South Africa had no role in this framework. The Palestinian Authority did not implement or administer it either, even though Mahmoud Abbas and senior PA officials attended the summit and were aware of the voluntary exit provisions. Their absence in South Africa's information chain stems not from exclusion, but from the fact that they were not operational participants. They simply never conveyed this information to Pretoria. South African commentators claimed Israel had blocked or abandoned the travelers. This is impossible when Israel is the state actor that approved, vetted, and physically enabled their departure. Hamas refuses to let its population leave. Israel permitted it. Inside South Africa, these ordinary travel procedures were twisted into accusations. Gift of the Givers publicly claimed Israel had refused to stamp the passports. Activists echoed the claim. Officials wandered into the same messaging. The details of transit procedures were discarded and replaced with a narrative that matched domestic political agendas. So dangerous. The scene inside OR Tambo was far less dramatic than the online version, but the handling was deeply flawed. Throughout the day, officials issued contradictory statements. By the time the travelers were allowed to disembark, the country had already been swept up in a completely false narrative. Gift of the Givers' opportunistic intervention and the distortion of state response. Again showing how much control Gift of the Givers has over some of the political happenings in South Africa. Gift of the Givers had no role in organizing any part of this movement. They did not arrange the exit, the coordination, the transit, or the aircraft. They only appeared once the plane had already landed. But all the PR and publicity will go to Gift of the Givers. Saved the day yet again, did they? This exposed a significant weakness in South Africa's governance. Officials relied on the narrative of one unelected NGO figure rather than verified intelligence, simply because we don't have any intelligence. Problem number one. But let's just read that again. Officials relied on the narrative of one unelected NGO figure rather than verified intelligence. Wow. I mean, if the safety and security of South Africa wasn't top of mind for me now, it sure is. This was not humanitarian leadership. It was institutional fragility. I quite like that. See, the tragedy was never their arrival. The tragedy was how quickly South Africa turned a routine movement into a spectacle engineered for outrage. Yes, a lawful exit pipeline was repackaged as a crisis. Facts gave way to slogans. This episode reveals a deeper structural problem. South Africa's political environment is so vulnerable to reactive storytelling that a single influential voice can override due process and distort public understanding. This was not a humanitarian emergency. It was a failure of state competence. This was not a humanitarian emergency. It was a failure of state competence. Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. Link for this article in the description. So let's do a quick side-by-side comparison. What are the SA activists and some of the mainstream media spewing? And what are some of the SA Jewish reports and BizNews articles saying? So, SA activists, Israel dumps 150 plus Gazans on unsuspecting South Africa in covert ethnic cleansing op. Yo. The other side, structured voluntary exit under US, Egypt, Qatar, Turkey framework. Gift of the Givers says they were really distraught coming from 2 years of genocide. Israel sent them without coordination. On the other side, Gazans paid privately for organized exit, quiet, lawful, and chosen by the passengers themselves. Previous flight, October 28th, arrived identically. No incident. So what makes the second arrival so much more dramatic? To all of this exposes how quickly facts drowns and distorts reality, and how just one divisive, emotionally charged narrative, strategically placed messaging, can turn a simple event into a media storm, media frenzy. It took over social media, news headlines, and even YouTube. But the exact same thing had happened a week or so before. The complacency of the government. Does that mean more planes are on the way? A country, by the way, riddled with illegal immigrants, huge world-based unemployment rates, 1 week away from an international leaders summit, an economy not growing. We're in the International Court of Justice, but we're hosting a G20 event. So is this something South Africa needs right now? Like, methinks not. There is a playbook which is used by governments worldwide. Some of us can see it, some of us aren't very aware of this. But for all of this frenzy, for the second event, nothing happened for the first event. Was this done to hide something else? The playbook is to create a distraction. Distract, divide, create an emotional situation where everyone wants to get involved. Or perhaps you're doing something else in a completely different province. See, the entire media landscape has been entirely focused on this. And you know what? For the last couple of weeks, they've been super focused on the Madlanga Commission. And my question is, what's happening in the background? What did we miss? What isn't being reported on? Because there was no drama for the first plane landing. Where was Mr. Not so gift of the givers then? What's so different now? Guys, we got to keep our ears and eyes open. The ability to create a different reality, distort opinions, divide through divisive and angry, emotional, charged narratives is something every single government is very well versed in. So my question is, what did we miss? What wasn't covered? Who did what while we were all so very focused on this? And when it comes to creating a narrative, I am putting a video together to show you how the continued denial from government that South Africa has any race-based issues in light of the Solidarity banner. I have a video of a professional body language expert. He trains military leaders in countries worldwide. And he's talking about what is a psyop. And it perfectly defines the very narrative that played out this week, thanks to that banner. And then they post that there are no race-based laws. Please stop disseminating misinformation. If you really take a look at South Africa and remove the conversation about transformation just for a moment, then yes, South Africa is a race-based country because you want transformation. But then my question is, for how long? For how long are you going to continue to fail to implement transformation, but continue to promise transformation, denying race-based initiatives, which do exist because you think it will create transformation? And 31 years later, almost every stat, fact, and figure shows otherwise. Okay, guys, that is my ramble for today. If you know a little bit more about what's been happening with this story, something I maybe haven't put into consideration, drop me a comment, please. I think this might be the first time I actually want to get involved in anything Palestinian or Israeli, because to date, I have yet to stand up and make any opinion. I don't think I'm educated enough. But to see our media, our government, create this sort of media frenzy before G20, the G20 leaders dropped to G14 now, I think it is. So all of that coming together, I just wonder, it looks like a connect the dots sort of picture. And I'm looking for coloring in pencils, that's for sure. Other than that, I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to subscribe, gives my channel a boost, shows me that you are here for the truth. And then, of course, like, comment, and share this with anybody else. It really does support my channel to get in front of new audiences. Keep your hat of sanity on, guys. Just remember that everybody you're seeing on the roads and in the shops is most likely not the negativity and hate you're seeing on X, Facebook, or wherever you get your news. That is just a minority of people who fuel these sorts of conversations, which is also why we need to share the facts, the videos that look at this from a third-person perspective. Because emotionally, I'm not involved in Palestinians' fight with Israel. Because I don't have a place, I am not educated enough, and I do not have even the inkling of a tiny little understanding of what those people are suffering. So who am I to have an opinion? So this is an emotional-free look at how the media has created a frenzy. But I'm honestly very suspicious about what's not being said simply because that first flight landed with no drama. Thank you for your support. I really appreciate every single one of you. Paul, Nikki, spot number 1 for both of you. Thank you for joining the Next Rambles Club. If any of you want to show your support, hit join button, $14.99 a month, the price of a small Coke, and it just goes a long way in supporting me in making these videos for you guys. I hope you have a great week. Keep it together. You are amazing. Over and out.